Leaving isn't sudden. It creeps in, slowly, like rot in the beams of an old barn. You patch it and you paint it, and you tell yourself that it'll hold, but one day the roof caves, and you realize the rot had been winning for years. That's how it was for us. We didn't decide to leave in a single night. The land decided for us, and by the time we admitted it, it was already too late. It came in the mail, in a thin white envelope that felt heavier than an iron. My wife opened it at the table. Her eyes scanned the lines, and her breath caught. She passed it to me without a word. Property taxes overdue. New assessment increased. Balance due? Impossible. I read it twice, then a third time, as if the numbers might shift, but they stayed. They were hard as stone. 8,000 this year, my wife whispered, on top of everything else. The kids sat silent, pretending not to hear, but their eyes said otherwise. That was the moment. The notice didn't just take our money, it took our hope. We started packing the easy things, like clothes, tools, kitchenware, things that fit in boxes. But then came the hard part, the things that didn't. The old cradle, hand-carved by my grandfather, or the kitchen table, worn smooth by 1,000 meals, or the piano, even though half of its keys no longer worked. What about the plow, my boy asked, standing over it. Rust streaked its blade. Can we take it? I shook my head. It's too heavy, too old, and too useless. He looked at me like I just told him we were leaving a family member behind. And in a way, we were. The house had its way of holding memories. My daughter sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, tracing the pencil marks we'd carved into the wall as she grew taller. Can't we take the wall with us? She asked. I knelt beside her, my throat tight. No, sweetheart, but you can take the memory. She shook her head. The memory isn't the same. Downstairs, my wife stood in the kitchen, running her hands over the stove, the counters, the cupboards. She looked like she was memorizing them by touch. I couldn't watch. We left the barn for last. It was a skeleton by then. The beams were sagging, the roof was leaking, the doors hung crooked, but inside it still smelled of hay and animals long gone. I walked the rows of empty stalls, trailing my hand along the wood. I could almost hear the echoes of the cows, the horses, of my father's laughter as he taught me to work. In the corner, an old harness hung. It was stiff with age. I touched it like it was holy. Goodbye, I whispered. Before we left, we went to the family plot. 4 stones stood there. They were crooked and moss-covered. My grandparents, my parents, and a baby we lost before she ever had a name. The kids placed flowers, wild ones plucked from the ditches. My wife stood still, her eyes closed and her lips moving in silent prayer. I crouched by my father's stone. The letters were fading, but I didn't need them. I'm sorry, I whispered. I couldn't hold it in. The wind stirred, carrying the hum of machines from the corporate fields. I wondered if he'd be ashamed of me. or if he'd understand that I couldn't hold the property any longer. The day we left, the sky was gray. We loaded the truck until it sagged. The ropes were creaking against the weight. The kids climbed in, clutching boxes of toys and keepsakes. My wife climbed in beside me. Her face was pale and tight. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the house. The windows were dark, but I could still see life inside. I could still see meals at the table, laughter in the hallways, Christmas mornings, and rainy afternoons by the fire. All of it trapped in memory, now sealed behind empty glass. Drive, my wife said, but my hand stayed on the wheel, unmoving. I can't, I said. You have to. The tires crunched on the gravel as we pulled away. The kids looked back through the rear window, their faces pressed to the glass. My daughter waved, as if the house might wave back. I kept my eyes on the road. If I looked back, I wasn't sure I could keep going. We passed miles of corporate fields. The machines glided over them, harvesting in silence, lights blinking in the gloom, not a person in sight. My son asked, "Do the machines ever stop?" "No," I said. He was quiet after that. When we reached town, it felt foreign. Shops shuttered, streets cracked, and only a handful of cars were out about. The school was boarded up. The weeds were growing through the playground. We pulled up to the co-op for gas. A man I used to know stood there pumping diesel into a corporate tanker. His eyes met mine and then dropped to the ground. There were no words, just shame. We filled up, paid with what little cash we had, and drove on. There's a point, leaving, where you cross a line, a literal one, a sign that says you're out of the country, out of the only world you've ever known. When we passed it, my wife let out a breath. It was shaky, like she'd been holding it for years. I felt something different. Not relief, not even grief, just emptiness, like the land had spat us out, and now we were drifting. Leaving wasn't sudden. It never is. It was death by 1,000 cuts. The taxes, the droughts, the storms, the machines, the silence. When we finally drove away, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exile. The land didn't beg us to stay. The house didn't weep. The barn didn't fall as we left. They just stood there, waiting, silent. And behind us, across the fence, the machines kept working. They would always keep working, because the land no longer needed us. It only needed them. And we were gone.